All right.
Hey Subfuries, question time. What do Norse mythology, Sherlock, and Hot Fuzz all have in common? Well, one thing is a final battle, where you have the final confrontation of your hero and your villain. You get to kill a few characters, and you get to make your readers cry. Final battles appear in almost every story in some shape or form, but the question we'll be talking about today is what makes for a good final battle. Though before we can get to that, we should probably define...
I'd say if there's any loose ends, that battle ties up all of the loose ends. So, for instance, like... seeing how strong Husai truly is. Very primitive rant Sona on this vid. Okay. Not quite sure what you mean by that, Levi. Yeah, but wait until we get to like halfway through the series when it's only like videos that are like 3 years old. Because remember, this video is 6 years old. 7 years old. 2018. Like, this shit is ancient.
just what a final battle is. It may call to mind images...
Oh, right. All of the ties. So, like, the dragons, the octopi, Gaia and Anima, the fate of the world, the warriors of light, like, putting everyone's fate on the line. And closing up all of those, you know, even like inner character turmoil things, like it's the end battle and those two characters that have always fought the entire time are like, you know, shaking hands saying, I'm glad to be fighting by your side at the end, even if we don't agree on shit. You know what I mean? And then everyone accepting the inevitable as they're being just completely wiped out by the Monarch. Trying to push back as hard as they can, knowing that he's not even trying. The Monarch's not even trying.
of the forces of good, all dressed in shiny armor, clashing with obligatorily clad in black bad guys. But final battles appear across multiple genres, most prominently in fantasy and science fiction, but also in action, thriller, mystery, and plenty of others. Simply put, the final battle takes place at the climax of the story, pitting your protagonists against the antagonists in some combative form, with the consequences of said battle determining the outcome of your story. Though we'll be talking more about the science fiction fantasy side of this. A final battle also may or may not include the following. When considering ways to write a final battle, it somewhat comes down to what we'll call primary and secondary conflicts. We'll discuss what they mean, how to use them, and how to subvert them, and we'll also be talking a lot about Lord of the Rings, which is always a fantastic thing to do. So, primary and secondary conflicts. Here's a challenge for you next time you're reading or watching a final battle. If you were to phrase that confrontation between the protagonists and antagonists in a single question, what would that be? Now, I love swords hitting shields, space lasers, and wizards doing things as much as the next guy, but the question is almost never simply asking who is better with a sword or who can fly a spaceship better. The final battle in Pirates of the Caribbean isn't asking whether Jack Sparrow can outsword Davy Jones. It's asking whether Jack has changed and become self-sacrificial enough to defeat Davy Jones by taking his place on the Flying Dutchman. In the Avengers, it's not so much asking whether Iron Man or Loki are stronger, but whether the Avengers can use the power of teamwork needed to defeat Loki, because everyone knows that nothing beats the power of friendship. And these questions are at the heart of the difference between primary and secondary conflicts. The secondary conflict is usually the visual confrontation between your protagonists and antagonists, the who is better with a sword question, while the primary conflict
Who's
is
better
the
with magic?
battle closely related to character or theme, involving a struggle or change within characters that help.
And it's kind of like Husai is like, as he's battling the Monarch and knows that he can't beat him, he's almost begging Gaia to use him as a vessel. But she refuses, because, like, this is the significance of having his consciousness erased. It's not like he just dies. His consciousness gets overwritten by Gaia's. So what happens when you die is your consciousness returns to Gaia. and you become a part of her and basically live inside of her. So you have your own, and then you basically can be reincarnated as one of the golems inside of the planet, if you wish, kind of idea. But if your consciousness is destroyed, then you're just oblivion. You're just sent to oblivion. You're just gone. Your consciousness doesn't exist anymore. So Gaia has been trying to explain to him the how dire of a consequence it is if she tries to do that. And he's like, I'm not going to be able to win the battle, and it's the only way. And she's like, I would, like, almost like, I would rather sacrifice everyone so we can all be together in the end, even if we lose. And that's kind of Gaia's decision, even going against Husai, saying, like, use me as a vessel, see if you can beat him. And she's like, the math doesn't add up, bro. Sorry. We're all going to Anima together. We're all going to fight this beast together. And then that's why it's like in the end scene when Gaia is like basically her consciousness is mixed with Anima's essence. All of the things that Anima has consumed, their consciousness comes to light because of Gaia. And then all of the main characters are like standing behind Gaia and like materialize, and you're like, Husai puts his arm on her shoulder, and then they charge into battle for the eternal battle to hold at bay, because the end conclusion is only a stalemate. It's how long can you hold this at bay before it continues to devour everything once again.
Determine the outcome of the final battle. The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King is perhaps my favourite example of this. At the climax of the story, Aragorn leads an army against Sauron at the Black Gate. This is a secondary conflict. At the same time, Frodo, Sam and Gollum come to their final confrontation at Mount Doom. The secondary conflict is being fought at the Black Gate, but the tension of the final battle comes almost entirely from the primary conflict at Mount Doom, where the reader is questioning whether Frodo is strong enough to resist the One Ring after all this.
Yeah, and that's kind of like everyone's fighting the monarch and everything, and then inside of Husai's mind is like Gaia and Husai basically arguing about what they should do for the end. And then Gaia decides that she is going to basically kill everyone but keep their consciousnesses intact. Because she is worried she's not going to be able to beat the monarch even if she takes over Husai's body. And gives him the full power of a celestial being.
Time. The answer to this question is integral to the themes of the story and Frodo's character arc, and it's the primary conflict in Mount Doom that ultimately determines the outcome of the secondary conflict with Aragorn at the Black Gate. And there's a good reason that this works. The secondary conflict with Aragorn at the Black Gate. And
why is it not going back?
Determines the outcome of the secondary conflict with Aragorn at the Black Gate.
God damn it. There we go. This isn't essential to the discussion, but it is interesting. At the climax, Frodo failed in both his secondary conflict wrestling with Gollum, as well as his primary conflict attempting to resist the One Ring. This is a particularly rare instance to happen at the climax. Tolkien wrote it this way to comment on the nature of evil. Not only does he reject the idea that anyone can be a paragon, always be moral, but it's the evil the One Ring put inside both Frodo and Gollum that ends up getting it destroyed. Good is not always destined to prevail, but he is saying that evil will always destroy itself. I love that idea.
And there's a good reason that this works. The final battle is the culmination of all of the elements of your story. Having both a primary and a secondary conflict ties your climax to character development, giving the final battle emotional weight by changing the state your characters are in, as well as giving it narrative weight by changing the state your world is in. It also allows the reader to empathize with the characters more by using relatable character struggles in the climax as well as spectacle. Because how many of us have ever had to defend ourselves in a sword fight before? But the question remains, how do you write these conflicts to fit together in a cohesive and persuasive piece of writing? Firstly, the primary conflict...
Actually, it was Frodo's mercy towards Gollum that destroyed the ring. True, Levi. Because if Frodo had killed Gollum, then the ring would have won. But it's because Frodo saw himself. Yeah, the second time he meddled in the world was literally to make Gollum trip. The true fate. And there is always, like, I've always played with this idea. I don't know how. Maybe they'll find some technology, maybe something will go along with it, but, you know, maybe somehow having the Viceroy turn back and have his good partition brain take over for some reason. And then maybe he, like, kind of gets killed by the Monarch or something, and, like, redeems himself in the end. I don't know. I don't know how it's gonna go. Because I'm like, there still has to be I never answered the question of, like, the partition of his brain. It's like, why did he turn, right? It's like, why was Gaia's hold on him minimal? It's like, what caused her hold to fail? And I think the answer to that is that Anima was letting her have a hold of him to, like, play with her and play with the Viceroy as, like, a twisted, yeah, sure, you can hold on to the strings for a second. And then when the crucial moment came, he was like, alright, get out of here. Peace, bitch. We don't need you. Because Anima is ancient compared to Gaia. So Gaia is like an infant celestial being compared to him. So she's, like, just as strong, but not as, first of all, not as devious. And second of all, not as experienced. So that's why having all of these other life forms, even lower life forms than her, even though they are parts of her consciousness, as something to, like, bounce her consciousness around with to basically scale her intelligence. You know? It's like ideas coming from multiple sources, from different perspectives. Hello, you filthy slag. Eggy Mayo, welcome, welcome. How is it going? We are talking about the final battle. The end of it all. The greatest of the great, and how all the ties and strings of our story fold and weave together into the final battle to make it all of the questions that the reader has are answered by the end of the book.
A character faces during the final battle cannot come out of nowhere. There's a reason it's less compelling when the hero refuses to kill the villain because... Honor! But they never had any trouble slaughtering hundreds of his henchmen. Why should they care?
Yeah, see, that's a problem I've always had, is like the why do you feel bad for the bad guy when you've killed all these other people? Usually that's how I think of it in anime, when they pull that kind of shit. But it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, literally, the Monarch is like Madara. Cons would be more like, there's something, I don't know what. Have nothing to do with that something. I only know what I know. But there must be something outside, and I'm particularly knowing and structured that there must be a form of knowledge outside of me. Yeah, there must be, like, I think of it like counting. And that's kind of where I came, like, the idea from my, book in consciousness is, right? Like, if no matter what, if I hold this up, this is one thing, this is another thing. So no matter what you call it, you know, this is one, this is two, each knee, you know, whatever it is, everyone can understand this is one and this is two. Because of speculative difference between them. And it's like in music, the idea that everything is kind of relative, right? It's like the first chord dictates what the rest of them are going to sound like because that's what you've heard. People can hear different songs in different ways based upon what they've heard before hearing that song because of how the notes interact, right? Like if you're listening to like a collage of different kind of songs and stuff like that, the reasons why some of them fold together well is because of that. But for everything that comes together to try to annihilate the Monarch, I don't know if we should be able to break through his shield. I think eventually maybe we can. Like, we're using, like, the anti-gravitic weapon and shit. We're trying to throw him into space. But we pretty much lose at the end of the day.
About a character struggle that was never there beforehand. It feels disconnected from the rest of the story and
Season 2 is an issue with this. At the end of Season 2, Korra loses the Avatar spirit and is left questioning who she is without it. She then decides to fight on anyway. But it was never an issue beforehand of her defining herself by her status as the Avatar. This made for a less interesting character struggle and primary conflict than it could have been. Yeah, I felt that way too. Where I'm like, her whole thing was like, you know, just because I'm the Avatar don't mean shit. I got a polar bear. Fuck you.
Makes for a relatively.
But I mean, it wasn't the greatest
choice.
series either
Readers
way.
care about choices that are difficult or important to the character, but that importance.
Which is why, like, the total final struggle at the end of the book is actually between Gaia and Husai over the destruction of his consciousness. And her unwillingness to sacrifice him in order to attempt to save everyone else. Even with his willingness. But she knows he doesn't grasp the true scope of what she's asking him to do. And that is truly what the conflict at the end is. And then she decides to ignore Husai and kill everyone anyways. And basically collect all of their consciousness. But the conflict, I'm trying to think, like, does that conflict come out of nowhere? No, because from the beginning, the reason why Gaia made Husai a vessel was so that she could technically do this. Different fun is being had, I see. Sean, welcome. Yes. We were unfortunately my side project fell through. The guy doesn't want to do it anymore, so we were kind of doing a discussion about that and how I feel about it, and now we're back to doing final battles. And we're discussing the inner thoughts of Husai in the final battle as he's struggling against the Monarch and he can't defeat the Monarch. And Gaia's like, or he's like, Gaia, just like take over my consciousness, because he knows that she can do it. It's been discussed before, but she's refused to do it. And he's like, can't you just like take us over and like use your powers to like defeat him? And she's like, the consequences of that would be annihilation of your consciousness. Normally, when you die, your consciousness just comes back to me and you live in your own essence inside of me. So you're basically eternal. But if I eliminate your consciousness by, like, invading your mind while you're still in a physical body, your consciousness is gone and you just evaporate. You don't exist anymore. There's no coming back. And it's like, that is something she is not willing to sacrifice. A piece of herself. Because at the end of the day, they're all going to die anyways, even if they do defeat the Monarch. So she's not willing to sacrifice that one single person over eternity in order to have the possibility. Because she's pretty sure even if she does take him over, she still can't beat the Monarch. I've been there. Buddy was so excited about creating our own TRPG and dragged me along with him, only for him and his other buddies to sit around toking out and not contributing to anything, wasting my effort and money. Kind of like the Inkle? Yeah. It is what it is. I mean, I love the concept. I would do it too, but I just don't have the time. Like, it's a lot of time investment to like do like a full 50-minute episode every week on AI. And then structure it and edit it and everything. It's like, it's one thing to like, he does everything and then I edit it and it takes like an hour and a half to do an episode. But it's like, oh my god, I don't have the time to do it from scratch. I'd have to literally dedicate the entire stream to doing that. And I'm just not willing to do that. I mean, I could probably do a little bit here and there if people are interested, but we like the morals and ethics on a parable level. That's about as far as like I really care to go with it. It's a really cool idea and everything, but it's like at the end of the day, I feel like I don't know. I feel like it's being pushy. It's like if people want to go and do the philosophy, like people are gonna do. People are stupid. Wizard's first rule: people are stupid. They believe what they want. You're not gonna change their fucking mind. So just putting the content out there for them to be able to have and look at, even though it's been out there for 60 years, it's just not in the public's eye. It's just this guy really wanted to push it into the public's eye, and I was like, well, that's kind of a like multi-year plan, right? I did some paragraphing on Cat version today. Got over halfway done turning installment 1 into proper chapters. I'm up to 6 chapters posted now. Hell yeah, Sean! That's what it's all about, bro!
This comes from spending time exploring the nuances of that decision beforehand. Just as the events of the plot lead up to the final battle, the arc of the character should lead up to their primary conflict.
Yeah.
In Terry Pratchett's novel The Fifth Elephant, the reader cares when Sam Vimes has to kill someone in the line of duty, because it has been explored why he doesn't like to beforehand. So where does this primary conflict come from? In John Truby's book The Anatomy of a Story, he details 3 important elements to designing characters: a weakness, a psychological need, and a moral need.
Husai's weakness is his inability to accept that things are beyond his, scope. Like, he's a very scientific and logical and understanding person, and one of his biggest problems is, like I said, he's human, so he knows that illusion magic exists. But he can't figure out how to make illusion magic exist. But he knows that it exists, so it's like, it tears him apart that he can't solve this problem that he knows that exists. He doesn't know which avenue to take. His psychological need is basically from that as well. It comes from his weakness, which is he is human, and he needs to find out why he's human, and he can't figure out why he's human. And his moral need is he's spent his entire life trying to find himself, and he's never truly done it. So now he's looking to other people instead of looking to himself. So he's basically, and that's why he's going out and doing this audit and being, instead of sitting back and letting everyone else deal with it. And it's like he also feels kind of pressured to do it because he feels that someone's going to blackmail him. The example of the MC is threatened with killing his beloved, and says he can't carry out the plan if they kill her. She says it doesn't matter. The mission is more important, and she's going to carry out the plan. But then they catch him, and she's the one who now says she doesn't want to sacrifice him. Oh, yeah, the double standard where it's like I'm willing to sacrifice myself, but I'm not willing to sacrifice you. Because you're too important. If you've read A Sword of Truth, that kind of reminds me of Richard's plan at the end. When Darken Rahl has cast a spell on him that he looks like his enemies will see him as Darken Rahl, and his allies will see him, or his enemies will see him as Richard, but his allies will see him as Darken Rahl. And Kaelin comes up to him. It's not a sacrifice if it isn't important and painful to lose. Exactly. And it's like, Sean, that statement, "Hey Valiant boy, how's it going?" I said, "Hey Valiant boy, hey, how's it going?"
Fuck
I'm
it,
like,
you,
yeah, fuck you. Okay, Valiant boy, I said hi, fuck you. Sean, it's interesting that you say that, because not being a sacrifice, it's something that, if you're in the position of Husai, and you look at what you have to give up in order to accomplish your goal, in the beginning, he doesn't really care that much. Similarly, you can't be brave unless you are terrified, and do it anyway. Exactly. Bravery is not the absence of fear, but acting in spite of it. Which is kind of the whole story, Sean, because he starts off absolutely terrified, and he's like, this puts it into perspective what he has to do. Because he's pretty sure that message was not for him to leave the tree. That message was for him to sit down, sit back, and watch the fuck what's going to happen. At what point is sacrifice no longer sacrifice, but delirium? Raymond Dow, that can happen. Hero is no longer a hero, but a madman. Anything worth dying for is worth living for. Yes. True. The death of Zaid. I know I always come back to this, but this to me is the most important part of the book, is Husai's reaction to Zaid's death. If you don't want to do it, but will do it to save others, then it remains a sacrifice, even if you're delusional. But think about this, Sean. This is what I was trying to say. The reason why Husai is so fucked up over Zaid's death is because he's trying to find justifiable reason to say that Zaid's death was a sacrifice and not pointless. What was the meaning of Zaid's death? There was no reason for him to die. There was no reason for him to do what he did. He was acting a fucking fool. But at the end of the day, he was sacrificing himself to save the guild. I see no battle going on. War isn't about dying for your country, it's about making the other poor bastard die for his. True. The battle necromancer is internal. It's a conscious and moral decision of overriding, like, it's Husai saying, destroy my mind, overwrite my body, and take out the monarch, and Gaia saying, no, I don't know if I'm strong enough, it's only like a 10% chance that I can beat him, and Husai's like, even if it was a 1% chance, still do it. And she refuses to do it and destroys the planet anyways. Soldiers sacrifice their daily lives to fight in defense of the freedoms of their country. True, Sean. That's why it's like it's kind of very odd for my book in its sense, like Final Fantasy, because it doesn't have like a true military. The military itself is the Adventurers Guild, because they're the only authority outside of the tree. So they are their own military. Everyone's part of the militia, essentially. But yeah, so we've basically got all of these for our characters. Soldiers always pay the price. One day. Yep.
Weakness is simply a character flaw. A psychological need is something that only affects the hero and must be fulfilled within themselves for them to live a better life.
Yeah.
While a moral need is something that affects those around them and must be changed within themselves for them to live a better life.
Yeah.
For example, in The Last Airbender, Aang's weakness is that he attempts to avoid problems rather than face them. Because of this, his psychological need is to overcome his past and let go of his guilt, while his moral need is to stop being so passive when faced with challenges, because he's letting those those around him get hurt and die. It's these three elements of a character that connect the beginning of the story with the final battle. Weaknesses, psychological needs, and moral needs create multi-dimensional characters, and
that's why Chapter 1 is so important to set all of this up.
Them in your primary conflicts creates a multi-dimensional final battle, which is always far more interesting. A character overcoming their internal struggles results in what Truby terms the moment of self-revelation. This revelation should be psychological.
See, I'm worried that if I make the Viceroy turn at the final moment, it'll be like Vader turning back. And trying to kill the Emperor. Because he's trying to kill Luke. Because of the connection between Husai. I mean, is it a cop-out to use the connection between Husai and the Viceroy? The fact of after Zayd's death, Husai started treating the Viceroy like a father figure, and the Viceroy started treating him like a son, and it kind of became this thing. And then, from his good side, having to kill his own son at the end of the first book, you know, he's still inside watching all of this horror happen, essentially. Even though he doesn't remember it, it still is a part of him when he's inside there. So he's kind of just sitting back watching this happen. So maybe some sort of traumatic moment, maybe, like, the struggle with Gaia takes too long and the Monarch kills Husai. And then the Viceroy goes fucking berserk and it's like Goku going Super Saiyan. And then it's like the Viceroy versus the Monarch. And then, the foreshadowing of the ending of the book is the conflict between the partitioned parts of the Viceroy's brain. And now that Husai's dead, it goes to like a third-person perspective. I wonder if that would be an interesting way to go for the end of the book. Because everything's up in the air for the actuality of what happens, other than the final battle with Anima. Soldier who comes home physically but not mentally is paid the ultimate price, even more than the one who didn't make it home. They're essentially walking corpses because they can't make the switch back to be a civilian. They're the hardest to help, too. Yeah, because it's like the things that you have to do, the humanity you have to put aside to be a soldier. And, like, yeah. On a normal day-to-day basis, humans are not meant for that.
Logical or moral, or both, depending on what kind of needs you established your character to have previously. One way to write this moment of self-revelation into your final battle is, rather than have your character turn around and preach to the reader, "Well, now I understand the true power of friendship," have them take a new course of action that they could not have taken before. You can see this trope in stories all over the place. In Shakespeare's Hamlet, it's only in his moment of self-revelation that Hamlet overcomes his depression and indecisiveness, his psychological need. And in doing so, he can finally confront the man that killed his father, which he could not bring himself to do before. A self-revelation that leads a character to take a new course of action when the tension is low means less, because there is less at stake for them, while a self-revelation that leads to a new course of action when the tension is high feels like a more convincing character change, because there is more for them to gain or lose, and it's at the final battle that the story reaches its highest point of tension. Now, while it's common for protagonists to succeed in both their primary and
So an example of ethics that could be called utilitarian. Everyone who tried to kill Hitler failed, and what's more, they provoked reprisals from the Nazis, massacres of entire villages. Everyone who tried to kill Hitler acted unethically and could be considered evil. Well, Hitler's the hero of the 20th century because he killed Hitler. I hope Twitch doesn't get mad from this comment. See, I think it's stupid that you can't have a discussion. The fact that people won't allow you to have discussions about this is the reason why the world is going to the way that it is. People are forgetting history and they're fucking repeating it all over again. You should talk about the most evil people because you don't want that shit to happen again. People think of it too much as you're giving weight to that. It's like, no, people that are going to take over the world are people that are going to take over the world no matter what. You have to make sure that the people know the signs of someone who's trying to do that. And people think it's Trump. People think it's Trump, and that's fucking sad. But he is a scammer, He is a con man. He is a piece of shit. But he's not a dictator, and he's not a fucking murderer. And if he was a rapist, he'd be in jail. That's how I think about it. 34 convictions? Who the fuck cares? How many convictions and how many things are there against Hunter fucking Biden? It's like, what the fuck? Those who don't know their own history are doomed to repeat it, so why are those people with the pigmented skin trying to remove all traces of slavery from the history books? Huh. Yeah, true, Sean. True. Like Asmund says, give it 10 years and we will vote slavery back in. It's 3 things. We vote slavery in, we get UBI, or we kill half the population. That's going to happen in the next 10 years.
Secondary conflicts, this isn't always necessary, and subverting this model can lead to some really interesting moments in a story. In The Return of the Jedi, the audience is led to believe that the lightsaber duel between Luke and Darth Vader is where it has all been leading to. This duel is a secondary or visual conflict, but the whole spectacle is subverted when Luke bests Vader but is defeated by the Emperor anyway. Suddenly, the fact that Luke is a better duelist doesn't matter, and it's here that the true primary conflict comes into play, whether Vader will choose the Emperor or his family, and it's this struggle that decides the outcome of the fight.
See, maybe we do something like this was an inspiration idea. Trump is more like a 1920 stock market disaster made flesh. Yeah, I could definitely agree with that. True. But I think what's the funniest part is he's, as far as I'm concerned, from what I've seen in my lifetime out of politics, he is the first person of authority to actually do what he said he was going to do. Where's Artemis Fowl when you need him? I didn't spell it right. Still, there's a bloody genius with money and a good heart. He's a bloody genius with money and good heart. Yeah, he's a mad, corrupt tycoon, not really dictator. True. But, you know, like he said, hey, I'm going to be a dictator when I'm president. And I'm pretty sure what he meant by that is, like, the things that I said I'm going to do, I'm going to do. And no one's going to stop me from doing them. And that's what he's been doing, like, basically every day. Executive order after executive order after executive order. And this time nobody's there to stand against him because everybody fucking wants this. So, and now the shit with China, which is so fucking funny. Fucking tariff war. But, I mean, it is what it is, right? Fucking world's a crazy place when you look at it.
Final battle, not the lightsaber duel that we were all led to believe. The fact that
I don't think a rump of a racist think of Trump as a racist, but an equal opportunity asshole. He offends everyone across the board. True, he's racist, he's sexist, he's fucking he's a dick. He's like, what's another one? Oh, he has like an ego, right? He has to make a spectacle for himself. It's not a mystery how he's there. If he's the only guy talking about certain issues people have, then they'll vote for him. It's hardly a mystery. Yeah, and when all the Democrats, all they can say is, why didn't the black people and the Hispanic people vote for Kamala? She's black. All those Hispanic people and all those black people voted for themselves to get kicked out of the country. It's like, bitch, they're not illegal fucking immigrants if they can vote. And I love this new shit of being like, oh yeah, Trump's going to, what was it that fucking chick said? Yeah, if we get voter ID, then women aren't going to be able to vote. And it's like, wait, can you say that again? So if we get voter ID, women won't be able to vote. What do you mean by that? Like, women don't have IDs? What? If 20,000 immigrants show up in your town and it makes you feel nervous, Trump says that's justified, and the Democrats say you're a silly racist. True, Eggy. And it's the fact that, as everyone says, they're not immigrants, they're illegal immigrants. If 20,000 legal immigrants, and I can actually speak for this because this has happened over my lifetime in Canada, because the population of Canada and Indo-Canadians has, like, skyrocketed. Like 30% of the people around here are Indo-Canadian. And it's like, that's not racist that, you know, they've come over here, and I've literally in my lifetime seen the amount of increase from them, and they're all legal, and it's all completely good. And it's like, I honestly don't even know if I don't know a single illegal immigrant, or I don't know that I know one. I want yous to do government by lottery. SSN get dumped into a pot and numbers are pulled at random to fill the Congress. Only law-abiding citizens in the correct age range that don't earn over 30,000 per year get entered. Us, not US, not yous, sorry. Yeah, Sean, I've always thought of the idea of, like, being in office should be a burden. You should not want to be in office. It should be like doing your, like, military training for 2 years if you're in a country that does, like, whatever it's called, like compulsory military service. Yeah, those who want it don't deserve it. Exactly. That's why people that practice law can't be on a jury. Because they know how to manipulate the system. It's not so much what he does in the US that I dislike about him. It's not my country. It's that he doesn't respect international law and is very disrespectful of the governments. It's like, bro, you're our ally. Why do you impose tariffs on us? I have never met a racist on radical grounds. Only people frustrations over people not culturally assimilating. Yeah. It's never actually about the person having black skin or brown skin. It's about that person not integrating properly into what you believe your values of society should be. And people say the same thing about white people. It's just, it's not reported on because nobody gives a fuck about it. It's just a double-edged sword. People who watch CSI and NCIS ruin juries too. Oh, true. True. You know what's the best example of that? If you've ever watched Malcolm in the Middle, and the episode where Lois is, like, on the jury, and it's like by the end, it's like she's so into it that she thinks she's defending her own son on the jury, or on the trial. And it's like, just dismiss herself from it because of a hung jury. In Europe, there's severe hatred toward people from the next village over. I mean, here, people have a lot of, like, I'll give you an example here. There's a clan of, like, basically they're, like, the idea of, like, Canadian Amish people, right? They're called the Heterites. And people are, like, and there's, like, I don't know, 600 of them around here, and this is a town of 6,000 people. So they're, like, 10% of the population of the town. And they live in, like, one giant community kind of thing, right? And it's like some people in the town absolutely, like, kind of despise them, kind of for no reason. Because they're, like, they're frugal, they're, you know, like, they'll come into Walmart and they'll buy 150 things of Cheese Whiz that are on sale. Then they'll repackage them in smaller packages and sell them to the Heterite community and, like, get money. Or like, you know, there'll be like shirts on sale, final sale for like $1, and they'll buy 300 or 400 of them. Just as like an investment. So it's like people get pissed because it's like they have to deal with that, but it's like it totally makes sense. I had to do the same thing with brown people back where I was before I moved, because they would do that too, and they would just like buy things in bulk at cheap when they were on sale at places, and then sell them basically on the street at like farmers market kind of things. Like repackage and rebrand everything. They sell it within their own community. That's the thing. So like they put together like a community fund, and then one of them will go out and buy all of the Cheese Whiz for the entire community, and they'll just sell it back in smaller increments. And that's literally how the economy inside of their like clan works. It's super smart. It's literally like communism within a structured area. That's literally how they treat it. And then they just like basically pool all their money together and everything, and basically work together whether what's best for the people. It makes it so they can do business without having to rely on credit cards. That's like their number one thing, is dealing in cash, so they never have to deal with credit cards. That's because 100 miles on European roads is gross, whereas it's a straight line, 8-lane motorway in North America. Plus the fact that, Eggy, in America or Canada, you drive for 27, 28 hours straight, and you're not even halfway across the continent. You drive for like an hour and a half to 2 hours some places in Europe, and you've gone through 3 countries. So, yes, they're a sect of Amish people, basically. But they use technology in, like, they use cars, you know, they use phones, but they don't, like, use credit cards. They almost always deal in cash. So. But, like people say, the real Hutterites moved uptown like 50 years ago, and these Hutterites are like the fake Hutterites. It's like a clash between them, because these guys were like, you know, they started using technology and shit like that, whereas the other guys are like, you know, they still use horse and wagon and raise cattle and shit like that, right? Not that the Amish now have to carry lights on their wagons because they were always run over. Okay, I get it now, Raymond. It went over my head. I was like, wait, what are you talking about? And I was like, oh, the roads. If you're an Amish person in a wagon on a road at night and you don't have lights. Not a good time. Not a good time.
Vader doesn't even use a lightsaber when turning on the Emperor, emphasizes the important themes of there being good in everyone and that family and loyalty can change the world more than violence ever could. Now, fantasy and sci-fi have a tendency to rely on a trope where one hero is largely responsible for the defeat of the antagonist.
By the way, there's some Amish in Bolivia. I don't know how they got there. That's interesting. Reminds me of the Family Guy scene where they keep rebuilding the barn. Yup. Yup. It is what it is.
And there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that. Having a story focused on one individual can be done well, but if you want to write a final battle that stays...
I guess running from opposition in cheap land at some point. Yeah, I'm like, how long have they been there? They've been there for more than 200 years. 'Cause, like, they consider using, like, steam engines, right? So it's like, if they came over, they would have had to come over on, like, an actual boat, right? They have to use reflectors on their wagons and have lanterns, even though they don't use technology often. That doesn't mean they can't work on it. I'd trust an Amish mechanic any day. Maybe that. I like to think they just really lost.
Is away from this trope, having a protagonist lose their sick.
For the record, I adore season 3 of Legend of Korra, but anyone ever asks Legend of Korra says Legend of Korra is bad, then there were things wrong with it. But they need to watch season 3. I mean, yeah, true. It was great, but it's like, it's... When your main content is 10, the spin-off's always going to be a 7. Like, look at Game of Thrones without the ending. Look at the first 5 seasons of Game of Thrones and look at House of the Dragon.
Secondary conflict in the final battle is one way to do it. It creates an unexpected moment of tension and danger for the reader, as well as easily allowing for the involvement.
And I was gonna say, like, between the people that are actually, like, on Monarch level, it's like the 4 Warriors of Light, each of their squires, and then all of the Guardians. So there's 16 of them in total. Plus outside is like 24. Then there's the main group, which is like Husai, his 7 friends, Yap, Sid, Hildebrandt, maybe someone else. There are electric fireplaces made by the Amish, and they seem to never break down. Yeah, probably because they make them without the idea of obsolescence. Maybe it's the simplicity combined with a desire to maintain reputation, so they make good shit. True, Eggy. Whereas companies like planned obsolescence, the idea that they design things to break after a certain period. Like, things aren't designed to last anymore. They're literally designed to break after a certain period of time. Because they could make shit that could literally last forever, but then no one would ever need to buy more of it. So it's kind of a setback of the idea of capitalism. Which should be a law written into the country, but then again, you get everything from China. That's the biggest problem of, like, that's my idea of, like, why planned obsolescence is illegal, but nobody is enforcing it. Exactly. And it's not like, it's something that's really hard to prove on, like, a manufacturing level, right? The iPhone stuff was insane. Yeah, I know. I've had the same Android for 5 years, and it's as good as new. My other computer has been running on my phone, my old phone, because it fell off of my bike, and it cracked, and the bottom part of the screen is black, so I can't, like, bring up the keyboard on it. So, I literally use it as the internet for my other TV, and I always have it on Wi-Fi USB tether, and it's just tethered to my other PC, and it gives my other PC internet, because I only have one Ethernet cord, and I used to switch it back and forth between the PCs when I turned this PC off. Now I don't even worry about it. But I'm not using the Wi-Fi on this for streaming. I'm using hardline, like landline. Fucking. How do you fleece a sheep? Release a new iPhone and charge $2,500 for it. True! Release it every 6 months. And claim that it's way better than the original one. It makes the original one obsolete.
Involvement of other heroes in the defeat of your antagonist, because your protagonist needs them and can't do it themselves. Who doesn't need the power of friendship?
True!
Though an important side note is that there's usually more than one primary conflict at play during the final battle. Luke having to resist the dark side, Vader having to choose between family and Emperor, and the TIE Fighter pilots questioning whether the good guys are really the ones with the space laser called the Death Star.
Are we the baddies?
But there are other interesting ways to use primary and secondary conflicts. Let's be honest, the evil guys always have cooler outfits, and what better reason could there be for an author to want a character to turn having the character succeed in their secondary conflict, but only at the cost of them losing the primary conflict, can be an effective way to do this. It gives real consequences to a character flaw and allows the reader to see the character in a radically different environment to where they were before, which can be far more interesting than simply referencing a weakness without deeply exploring its consequences.
True.
Avatar: The Last Airbender Zuko is a great example.
Again, this goes back to Zayd. Man, Zayd is such an integral part of this book, because that ties everything together with Husai.
While definitely more of a grey character than strictly evil in Season 2, Zuko helps beat Team Avatar, conquers Ba Sing Se, and returns home victorious, but he did so at the cost of giving into his anger and betraying the one person who truly...
Bro, your chat is popping off today? Hell yeah, Eggy Mayo. We're glowing and flowing. We are grilling and chilling.
Loves him, his uncle. For the obvious reason, this usually doesn't happen at the climactic final battle. It would be a bit disappointing to have your hero get to the end and say, you know what, the evil guys do have better outfits. The end.
It does go back and forth quite a bit, though, right? It's like you're against the Beastman and Fafnir, then you're on the Beastman and Fafnir's side, now you're against the Viceroy, now you have to convince everyone else because you're against the entire Adventurers Guild, now that you're on the side of Fafnir and the Beastman. So it's like you are continuously switching sides during this war. People talking about philosophy one moment and bringing out the dad jokes the next. True, Eggy. We just need Valiant Boy in here and then,
Instead, this tends to happen partway through the
We'll have the
story.
drama
The obvious
aspect,
exception
too.
to this are stories about fallen heroes. The Godfather is the story of a man who at the final battle beats his enemies, but does so at the cost of him becoming the very thing he used to hate, winning his secondary conflict, but losing his primary. He became a fallen hero. On a different level, final battles are, by nature, meant to be final, right? Well, not to
I spawned 2 offspring, so my dad jokes are not only lame, but genuine. Nice, Sean. Nice.
some authors. In fact, a lot of authors. There's an incredibly common subversion of the final battle that plenty of authors use. How many times have you read a book where the heroes take down the villain and save the day, only to return home and find that the villain is making one last-ditch effort to hurt them or someone they love? Seriously, for how common this trope is, it took me ages to think of examples. In The Lord of the Rings, destroying the ring in Mount Doom isn't actually the end of the story in the book. That may have been the final battle, but the hobbits return home and find Saruman has taken over and destroyed the Shire, their home and the very thing they were fighting to protect all along. Likewise, in The Incredibles, you'll remember that Syndrome is
Example of awful final battle, the Hobbit movies. True!
defeated in a big final battle in the city, but he then
Find it funny that my birthday comes and goes without notice for me, but when either of my offspring have a birthday, I feel old. Well, I have a niece and a nephew, and they're turning 7 and 8. So, like, I feel fucking old. It's my younger sister, too. It's like my younger sister has kids that are hitting almost, like, they're nearing double digits. What the fuck? They're gonna be teenagers before I know it.
turns up at their home threatening to kill
My other friends, my friend who actually has a kid, her friend's, she's fucking 12. Holy shit, my other friend's 16. Jesus. Like, it's scary. Find it funny that my birthday, I got something interesting for you. 21 for my oldest, and the second turns 20 on Halloween. Nice. Been trying to read all the famous books ever made. Good luck with that, Eggy. Not kill. He wanted to kidnap him.
Jack. While the final battle is typically over the grander goals or plans of the antagonist, this one last stand tends to be an attempt to hurt the heroes more personally. The last stand can be a powerful moment for the author to put the protagonists in their most
Oh, at about 180. The nickname is Allie, so that's why it's Halloween instead of Halloween. Ah, nice. That's clever.
vulnerable position and reveal what the stakes truly are. Usually the villain fails in their last-ditch effort to hurt the hero, but on the rare occasion that they succeed, it can make for a truly poignant ending to a story, that despite winning the final battle, they couldn't protect what they cared about most.
See, this is kind of the opposite. Is the monarch kind of wins the battle, but loses the war. But I realize there's never any guilt in any of the books. There's shame, but no guilt. Apparently guilt doesn't appear in literature until Shakespeare. Interesting, Aggie. That's really, really interesting. It's a powerful thing that people don't think of, the difference between shame and guilt. It's subtle and nuanced, but it is a very potent thing. Because, one, you feel that you have to atone for something, right? Can you feel shame without guilt? Yes, Sean. But I don't think you can feel... maybe you can... I don't know. Can you feel guilt without shame? That's what I was researching. I feel like you can feel shame without guilt. Because you can do something that's like... Like, it depends on the type of person, right? Like, I could do something that you might feel guilty for doing. Right? And I think I have a great example of this. And I love to bring this up because it's fucking hilarious. But for me, this would be it. Mandragora or something, man. Like, there's so many monsters in the bestiality that could easily explain. It's like, I don't feel guilty that I accidentally used that word instead of bestiary. I feel ashamed that I used that word instead of bestiary. But that would be my example personally of an instance where I feel shame, but I don't feel guilt. Because guilt would assume that I would have to make up for something. That, like, I did something wrong. But the shame is just, oh, that's just really embarrassing. And I'm ashamed that I said it. Because I shouldn't have said it. Because it's just one of those words that's super bad, but it's just like, it's when you're talking a lot, words mix together and shit happens, right? That's the worst thing. I would say shame is externally imposing, whereas guilt is internal. Actually, that's a great analogy for the differences, and I'm taking that one. We haven't done one in a while, Eggy, but you're going on the community poems. We haven't put someone on there for a while. Because we were kind of just throwing people on there. But yeah, no, that is the perfect description of it. It's subtle, but it's significant. Guilt without shame makes sense because nobody else knows about what you're guilty of. Well, to feel shame, I think you must feel guilt and have it known to the public. Interesting, Sean. Could you give me an example, okay, no, sorry. How would you react to my example then? What would you say that's not shame? It's embarrassment? Because shame would require some sort of... I mean, it's a shame to me because I hold myself to a high standard and, you know, saying a word out of context like that is pretty bad. You can be embarrassed about something flirting with you, but you're not ashamed. Well, I'd say because it's on, like, such a topic that it is beyond embarrassment. It's shame. Because I would not want to say that word. But... So in a lot of ancient books, I've read people feel bad for having done something because of how others reacted, but they never express any real internal guilt. Interesting.
If that's what you want to say thematically, then that's up to you, you pessimists. In a sense, Doctor Who's episode Jenny is sort of...
Oh, what I was going to say is, like, the thing I like about the ending of our book is the fact that the hero loses. All of the heroes and all the characters lose the battle, but they win the war. When I researched it, the academics said the first literary example of internal guilt is Hamlet or Macbeth. It was an accident, thus you are embarrassed. If you had used it deliberately, but then realized it was wrong, now you feel shame. Okay, because I would have, like, escalated embarrassment to shame simply based upon the context of it. Like, for me, that'd be like saying you have a small dick. It's like... Let's say it's true, right? It's something that's like I'd be shameful to say, but it's not like I'd feel guilty about saying the truth. Right? Whereas on the other hand, if it wasn't true, then I would feel guilty. So I think to me, like, that would be the nuanced difference between how I would feel shame or guilt. But then again, it's all about, like, what do you consider those things, right? And like I said, guilt to me is something that you feel you have to repent for. You have to make up for. You have to do something that counters whatever you did. Whereas shame is something that usually touches upon a taboo or out of touch subject or an interpretation of a subject in that matter that is completely out of context of the original conversation or idea.
Of an example of this. The Doctor saves the day, but the villain makes one last stand.
I'd say embarrassment is personal, where shame is embarrassment of your behavior, identity against wider social values or expectations. Like I said, I hold myself to a very high expectation, so I would be like, it's very shameful of me to have like thrown that word out there just randomly, right? Like Paula Deen admitted that in the past she had used the N-word. She isn't proud of it, but considering her age and when she was raised, she would have been required to use it, thus she feels no shame about it, but others have condemned her for it. Man, still on the same vid? Yes, Levi. That's how we do it, bro. It's been an hour. There's a lot to discuss. How do we rewind? You said something that nailed it. Oh, you mean to clip? So you can go back and clip whatever I said? You can go on to the VOD, and if you go to the VOD, you can go to the end of the last 5 minutes and clip something there. Shop rewind. Rewind the stream for $150,000, or for that's it. That's what I identified in the ancient books. There was no trying to make up for the bad actions. Yeah, Eggy, I could see that because it's something that's like imposed upon in a way of social structure, right? It's like, if the idea of you atoning is you yourself believing you did something wrong, and that in and of itself is atonement for the action, then I don't think guilt would ever come up in something unless it was presented in a way that was meant to be pushing the boundaries of what we think, like, spirituality and like emotional reaction really is. And I think that's what Shakespeare really tried to push. So I have a question for you and Sean. All right, ask away, Eggy. I'd say I'm all eyes, but I'm vision impaired, so I'll do my best. Sean. Eggy. Do you think guilt is only useful in a fully civilized society? No. Eggy? And do you think guilt is especially relevant when organized religion appears? I believe, Eggy, that guilt would actually be for a non-civilized society. And the reason for that is guilt would be the means by which that society held itself together and prevented people from doing things. If you did something that you felt guilty for that would, like, internally hurt you, it'd probably be something you wouldn't do, right? Whereas with a civilized society, generally if you do something with guilt in a civilized society, there are measures to be taken within that society to deal with it. Such as, we're talking extremes of breaking the law, right? So it's like, if there is something there to hold you accountable to the guilt, I don't think it needs to be facilitated in that self, because you're being held to a standard by society, whereas guilt is meant for you to hold a standard to yourself. if society is already holding you to a certain standard, then I don't think you should hold yourself to a standard that's below that, if you know what I mean. Like, if it's not against the law, you shouldn't feel guilty against doing it. Right? Whereas I'm like, I feel guilty promoting my channel and promoting my stories and, like, just in general talking to people about it because I don't want to feel like I'm like, oh, hey, I'm only here to talk to you about going to my channel, and if you know, as soon as I'm done talking about my channel, I disappear. So I'll lurk for like 2 or 3 hours, and I'll usually like use leading questions during that time till somebody says, oh, you're a streamer? And I'll be like, yeah, I'm a streamer. And be like, oh, I'll go follow you. It's like, I find that way, way better of a marketing tool than just going into random streams and being like, hey, I'm a streamer, how are you? And on the aspect of religion, I think religion appears out of guilt and the need to set things right. So I think it's like a 3-step process. Like, you gain guilt, then you gain religion, then you gain civilization. Depends on the guilt you're talking about. Personal guilt, the feeling, doesn't require a civilization. Legal guilt is determined by the society. Exactly, Sean. That's why you have to scale them in different ways, right? Religion is no different than government. Either one could be corrupted. And either one holds you in a societal bond towards what that guilt is. But I think religion has a much less rigid structure than a law system, right? But true, both have the potential and are completely corrupt. By their own nature, they are corrupt.
And a person dear to the Doctor, his daughter, sort of, died anyway. Hashtag bring back Jenny. So how might you write your final battle? Firstly, giving it primary and secondary conflicts makes for a multi-dimensional climax to your story.
True.
Secondly, this primary conflict should arise out of the moral or psychological needs that have been explored throughout the story before.
I love how I pass all these
this
tests.
Should manifest in them taking a new course of action that they could not do beforehand.
Yeah.
And fourthly, there are plenty of ways to subvert the typical final battle that make for an interesting, unique story. Whether you use these is simply up to you and depends on the kind of story you want to write. But that's all from me.